Hello, I'm Jacob Chandler, and I'm a Boy Scout. I'll be conducting with a veteran, Mr. James Farris. He served in Iraq and Kyrgyzstan, and he was also in the United States Army as well as United States Air Force. This interview is part of my Eagle Scout Service Project. The LaSalle Veterans Exhibit and interviews are part of my Eagle Scout Service Project. The LaSalle Cultural Center of Gina, Louisiana will display my LaSalle Veterans Exhibit. Our mission is to preserve our LaSalle Parish heritage. The veterans of LaSalle Parish often have experiences from the time of service that go untold. Mr. James, what period or time did you serve in?
I joined in August of 1987 and retired in March of 2012.
Yes, sir. What branches of service were you in?
I did 12 years in the Army Guard and another 12 plus years in the Air Force Reserves.
Yes, sir. Would you point to the areas on this map where you served in?
Well, naturally I did United States. I did made a trip over to Belize. I've been to Alaska. And I did a deployment to Baghdad, Iraq, and also Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, right there.
Yes,
Those are my two deployment locations that I actually deployed to for extended periods.
Yes, sir. How old were you whenever you started your military training?
I was 18 years old.
Why did you pick the Army branch to serve in whenever you started?
In all honesty, it was because they offered me tuition exemption with it. If I joined, then they would offer tuition exemption into any Louisiana college. So I needed the help, so I figured I would join.
Yes, sir.
And I was planning on doing 6 years and getting out, and I did 24 years.
Yes, sir. Well, what all areas did you train at in the United States for your service?
My training area was actually in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and basically right up in this general area here was where I did my training. Everything was done at Fort Leonard Wood, and I did about 20 weeks up at we call it Fort Lost in the Woods. I still call it that, but that's where I did all my training.
Yes, sir. What was your training like?
I would say it was fun, but it wasn't fun. The first couple of weeks we learned the basic, or we actually got our equipment issued, and then we learned the basic marching techniques, and then we started learning the M16 training, how to break down, clean, and then how to fire the M16 weapon, how to respond to chemical attacks, put us into a gas chamber, and we had to put the protective mask on. We'd go into the gas chamber, then we had to break the seal and reset the mask, clear and seal the mask. And then before we were able to get out of the gas chamber, we had to actually remove the mask and state our name, and then we could actually leave the gas chamber. That was a not so fun experience. And then we learned first aid and just basic how to handle different situations. And then that was the basic training part. Then you move over to what's called AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. And that was another 8 weeks. The 8 weeks was basic training, and then you had another 8 weeks of AIT. And I went in as what they call an 88 Mike, which is a motor transport operator. And there you start out learning how to drive a Jeep. And at that time it was a Jeep, which they don't even have Jeeps anymore, and Blazers. And then we graduated up to like deuce-and-a-half trucks, and then tractor trailers. We learned convoy techniques. We did our field exercises, and had to learn how to, if we got into a hostile environment, what we had to do, how to react to those hostile environments and things like that. So, like I said, that was the second phase of the 8 weeks.
Yes, sir. Did you feel that it adequately prepared you for your service?
Yes. It prepared me for service and also civilian life too.
Yes, sir. Well, during your service, what all positions or job assignments did you have?
I was a again, I was a motor vehicle operator my entire career. I started out in the 1087 Transportation Company, which was located over in Vidalia, and spent a couple of years there. Then I transferred to the 142nd Signal Battalion out of Birmingham, Alabama, and I was a Cardinals driver there. And then I transferred, when I got hired with my civilian job here in Louisiana, I transferred to the GINA unit, which was the 1086 at that time, and I drove what was called a 915, which was for the most part, it was just like a commercial tractor trailer. And we eventually transferred over to the PLSs, which is Palletized Loading System truck. And I ETS'd out of the Army Guard, switched over to the Air Force Reserves, and there I was a vehicle operator there, which as a vehicle operator in the Air Force, your job is driving buses, moving air crew, moving personnel from point A to point B, and some cargo movement. And as I stayed there, I progressed up in rank and I became the section supervisor, or flight supervisor. And I was a supervisor when I retired out.
Yes, sir. Well, what all gear and equipment did you have issued to you during your service?
Just basic equipment. We were issued time here in the United States. We were just issued our normal utility uniform and our dress uniform. But on deployment, we were issued the full gauntlet of stuff. I mean, I was issued M16. I was issued the canteen, the brain bucket, the helmet, full flak vest, chemical suit, protective mask, protective eyewear. I mean, you name it, we had to pretty much carry it. When I deployed to Iraq, I think we ended up with 7 bags of equipment that we had to fly when we flew into Iraq. And there was 2 of us deployed to Iraq at the same time, so we had 14 bags between the 2 of us.
Yes, sir. Wasn't that your part of your chemical suit right there?
That's part of the chemical suit there. That's actually pants that I had when I was in Iraq. They're normally in a vacuum sealed bag. This would be the vacuum sealed bag that they would be in, or something like this. And they stay, I don't know how long these are good for, but they stay sealed in this bag. And then when you need them, you break them out, or they're good for, I think it's 2 weeks or something like that after they're out of the bag, as long as you haven't entered a chemical environment. And so if you are expecting an attack, which at times we were expecting an attack, so we had to open those up. But I never opened up the pant or the jacket because I knew I could get to it very quickly. But there's different levels. It's called MOC gear, military orientation protective. I forget what MOC stands for now. Here I'm going to say something, I don't know what it stands for. But you have different levels of MOC, which is for the most part like the pants and then the jacket, or the pants and the boots and gloves, and just different levels. And you could go in certain levels when you needed to. And that way you'd have the rest of your gear would be readily available to you.
Yes, sir.
The things that were more difficult to put on, you put it on first.
Well, it was always reliable and appropriate for the times you needed to use them.
We never had to use it, thank goodness, but it was always available, and I knew I had no doubt that it would protect against the chemicals that they had in the country that I was in.
Yes, sir. Well, can you describe a typical day in the service? I know there's all variety of times you served, and also, I mean, you served 24 years, so there's a wide variety that you had. But
when you say typical day, you're talking typical at home station, or are you talking typical overseas? Because we have home station pretty much sitting with doing a lot of paperwork, driving the trucks, driving the flight crews and stuff like that. When we were deployed overseas, then the days were much longer, and some days were boring, some days were active days.
Yes, sir.
I mean, like I said, home station, a lot of it was doing training material, issuing. We did driver's license. We had to issue license to people so they could drive military vehicles. They're not driver's license. You know it. Basically, it was more like a driver's permit.
Yes, sir.
But then we would also drive flight crews around. We would also drive people around for tours and things like that. And then on deployments, when I was in Iraq, I didn't do what my job was. I was more doing contract work. I was overseeing contracts and overseeing local nationals and things like that. That was in our garrison area, and a lot of it was getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and dealing with them till dark, going out, checking the area. We were in what we call the green zone in Baghdad is where we were, and that area was supposed to be a safe area. It had several layers of security to get inside of it, but still you had no air defense. When I was in Kyrgyzstan, we were in a safe area. Our typical day in Kyrgyzstan was get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, go out to our job location, and we were a flight crew. We would shuttle flight crews. We'd pick up flight crews at the barracks, at their living facilities, and we would transport them out to their aircraft, and we'd get there, and we'd help them get their aircraft, the gear on the aircraft, and they would go. What they would do is the flight crews would fly down range to Afghanistan and would pick up troops and bring them back into Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan was a transit air center. The troops would fly into Kyrgyzstan and on commercial aircraft, because it was a safe area. They would fly into Kyrgyzstan, they would get off that, they would transfer over to military aircraft, and they would fly into Afghanistan. Then they would fly back through our area and get transitioned back onto a commercial aircraft to go back home. And then we also had air refuelers.
Yes, sir.
So we were responsible for getting the aircraft or the crews out to the aircraft so that they can do the refueling missions over Afghanistan.
Well, during off time, which may not have been very often over there while you were stationed overseas, what did soldiers usually do during their off time?
In Iraq, we didn't have off time. We pretty much worked 7 days a week in Iraq. When I was in Kyrgyzstan, we did have off time because we had enough people to support the mission. So, again, in Kyrgyzstan, we were in a safe area. It was the part of the old USSR, and they were a friendly nation or friendly country, so we were able to go out and we were actually able to take tours out into the city, and we could see different areas. I took one tour where we went on a trail to a waterfalls and stuff like that, and then you had right there on the base, we had a full gym. We had a basketball court, volleyball, running areas, had movie theater. We had, not that I drink, but we had bars on the base. You were limited on how much you could drink, but they had bingo. We also had church. I mean, we had a chapel, and we had preachers from different denominations that would come in, and they were stationed over there with us, and we could go to church services and things like that.
Yes, sir. Can you share any missions in particular that were important or that were very memorable to you during your service?
Again, we didn't have any missions that I necessarily, I guess one of them was we had the Secretary of Defense came in. When I was up here in Kyrgyzstan, we had several days that you don't want to remember, but we had several days that we had remains that we had to handle. We had to send crews out on those, and then I guess some of the good ones that I remember was going out, and like I said, we had about 3 days that was negative 19 degrees and going out working in the cold. I mean, here in Louisiana, we don't have the cold.
Oh, no, sir.
We don't see negative 19 degrees. So, I mean, we would have to leave the vehicles running 24 hours a day to keep them from freezing up. It was so cold. Then when I was in Iraq, getting to see some of the history, the picture that I showed you there, seeing the pictures of the presidential palace, actually walking through the presidential palace, hearing some of the stories of the presidential palace, going to some of the other palaces that I got to go to. We had one day that we had 2 IEDs. Well, 2 suicide bombers. I was trying to think of the name of it. We had 2 suicide bombers hit the compound at the same time, or I mean, one right after another, right there, and they were probably a couple hundred yards from where we were. We had mortar rounds dropping in on us. You could hear the mortar rounds coming in, but there was nothing you could do. You just kind of said, maybe they'll go on across. And 99% of the time they did. They landed in the green zone a couple of times, but for the most part, they always went around us and went over the top of us. And then just the typical days, just long, drawn out, Groundhog Day style. Same thing every day. Get up, go to work, go to bed. Get up, go to work, go to bed.
Yes, sir. Well, I see all these all these things you have over here. Can you describe some of them to me?
Well, this is Iraq money. That's actually about $75 worth of U.S. currency, but that's $5,000 or 5,000 Iraqi dinar notes. And then this here is Kyrgyzstan money. When I was in Kyrgyzstan, that's 20. I forget what they call theirs, but that was from Kyrgyzstan. These are just different, what we call challenge coins. Pretty much when you're given one of these, you keep one in your pocket. And again, I don't drink, but if you go to the bar, then everybody slaps one down, and the last one to slap it down has to pay for that round of drinks. But this one is Sharptrooper Warden from '05. This one is when I came home. They gave this to me when I came home from Kyrgyzstan. Got First Sergeant's coins, Command Chief coins. These are from Iraq, when I was over in Iraq. I was a Joint Air Support Group over there. This is actually a piece of Saddam's head. Not literally, I guess, but on the presidential palace, prior to me getting over there, they had 4 heads that was of Saddam Hussein, and they were on the ends of the building and then kind of in the corners and they had those in the back, and they let us go back there, my section, they let us go back there and get pieces of it to give away to dignitaries that was coming in, and that's actually a piece of that head.
Yes, sir.
Is what that is. And then this is just the Louisiana Honors Medal. Governor Chandler gave those out a few years ago. And then that's a pouch that I carried some of my gear in when I was over in Baghdad.
Yes, sir.
Again, anytime that we were outside of Baghdad, we had to be in what we called a full battle rifle, which was we had to have the helmets on, we had to have the full flak vest on. And then if we went outside of the area, the immediate area, we had to be armed. Even though you had the presidential palace, we had a layer of security there, and then you had the green zone, and there was a layer of security there, but anytime that we went outside the presidential palace area, we had to be armed anywhere we went. So.
Can you describe to me your shadow box here?
The shadow box. Again, you got my ribbon rack. this is a picture of me when I went through basic training. Then that's a picture of me about 2 years before I retired out. Ribbon or name tapes that I wore in the Army, and then the different name tapes that I wore in the Air Force. When I first got in the Air Force, we wore the woodland camo, and when I was deployed to Iraq, we wore the desert camo, and then the Air Force switched over to the ABUs, which is what that one there is. That was my unit patch in the Air Force. My patch that I wore when I was deployed to Iraq, and my state patch here from Louisiana, and then that was my patch. That was my Alabama patch, and then I was in another unit in Alabama. That was my other patch that I was in when I was in Alabama. Bolo badges, which was our grenades and rifles in basic training. That flag is a flag that I carried with me in both Baghdad and Kyrgyzstan. I always carried that flag on both of my deployments. We had a pouch, and that flag went with me on both the deployments. So it's, and then this is a return flag that they gave to me when I retired out. These are my access passes to get into the different areas when I was in Iraq. This is my driver or my access pass to get me into my work area when I was at Manas in Kyrgyzstan. And then these are my, in the Air Force, in the Army you have a MOS, in the Air Force you have an AFSC, and then this is my AFSC, which is transportation, and then that's basically, this is apprentice, craftsman, and I forget what the top one is, but it's basically just saying that I went through all the training and I was about as high as you can get.
Yes, sir. Well, I know certainly during your service there's a lot of serious times and a lot of memories that you don't always want to share. But were there any particularly humorous or unusual events that you had that you remember?
We're always pulling jokes with somebody. I mean, I've got one guy, like I said, when I retired, I had a friend of mine retired at the same time, and we still talk to each other. But as far as humorous, I'm trying to think of anything. Can't think of anything that was just excessively humorous. I mean, like I said, we were always pulling jokes on somebody. We were trying to get somebody back for something. So it was who could get who first.
Yes,
what
sir.
it amounted to.
Well, after your service ended, what did you do? Did you go to, I take it you went to work?
When I came back, when I finally retired out, then, I mean, right now I'm a state trooper, and that's what I've been doing for 21 years. And like I said, I was reserved, so I was doing that, and I was a state trooper at the same time. Or actually, when I first got in, I was an EMT, and then I got hired with the state police. And I just went to doing that, and now I have my weekends free, and I don't have to worry about deploying out anywhere. So I always thought that when I got out of the reserves, that I would be able to have 4 weekends a month, and I wouldn't have to do anything. And I'm busier now than I was before I got out.
Yes, sir. Well, why'd you decide to make the transition from the Army to the Air Force?
It was time for me to get out of the Army. I didn't see any rank advancement with the Army, and I was just tired of doing some of the things with the Army or with the Army Guard. You are state, which means that during hurricanes, or just at any given time, you could be deployed for different natural disasters, and you're also competing against everybody in the state for rank advancement. With the Air Force, that was a federal level job, so you were only competing with people within your unit for rank advancements. And you didn't have to worry about the deployments for state disasters. I mean, the only way that you was going anywhere was if the president called you up. So it was different. I was ready for a change.
Yes, sir.
I enjoyed the unit that I was in, my last unit that I was in here in Gina, but it was just time for me to find somewhere else to go.
Yes, sir. Well, I know you mentioned this a little bit, but during your service, did you make any friendships that you continue today?
Yes, I have one that is a really good friend. He lives in Monroe, and I still talk to him, try to talk to him on a regular basis. You have another one that I work with. He's actually based out of the Shreveport area, and then guys right here around the Gina area that I see and still talk to. Some really good guys. But I have the one in the Monroe area that we did about 19 years of service together. So when you do 19 years together, then you become really good friends.
Yes, sir.
I have a tag that has got James in Kirky.
Yeah.
Kyrgyzstan was part, like I said, it was part of the old USSR.
Yeah.
And when it broke, then it became their own country. And when it became their own country, then the people over there look Chinese, but they speak a form of Russian. Their letters and everything are in Russian lettering. You know how the Russian letters are real squared off and things like that. That's pretty much what their alphabet is like. This is as it is more recently here.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
And
Where'd you say this was?
this is, come on now. This is Manas. This is Transit Center Manas, is what is actually just outside of Bishkek.
Yes, sir. And so is this one where he's doing the Army or the Air Force?
This is, well, all my deployments were Air Force deployments.
Yes, sir. We can always, during the actual video, just insert like one of these videos, so that way.
That's the actual airport, and that building right there is where I was actually staying when I was there.
Wow.
This is Hotel California, and this over here was Camp Alaska over in this area here. And then this was my work area right over here. We had to drive around, and then that white building right there was my work area.
Yes, sir.
And
That's amazing.
and then I don't know if we can pull up.
So you said the airport where you stationed at, that was like the one of the jumping off points between going to and from Afghanistan?
Yes. That was I mean, everybody that went to Afghanistan had to come see us.
Yes, sir.
What they would do is they would fly into Kyrgyzstan and to Manas. Well, it was Manas, Transit Air Station Manas. They'd fly into Transit Air Station, and they would get off the commercial airliner, and they would spend about 3 or 4 days getting the rest of the gear together, getting their final briefings, and then they would then they would line up, they'd get on a military aircraft, and they would fly down range. And then that plane would drop off those and would pick up more that was coming back home, that was ready for going home. They would come back, and they would spend 2 or 3 days back there to transition from the mindset of we're getting shot at to the real people in the earth again. And then they would get on a commercial airliner and fly back home.
Yes, sir.
I was in Iraq That's gonna be the presidential palace there. And then back in this area was the actual, our living area. We had buildings there. I always said I always wanted to go on a tropical vacation. And I felt that a tropical vacation was palm trees, sand, and water. Well, I had sandbag walls, so I had all the sand I could possibly want. Right back here is the Tigris River, so I had water. And you walk outside, I had palm trees with fresh dates.
Yes.
So I guess I was on a tropical vacation, but I guess that wasn't my idea.
Yes, sir.
And then this is the tomb of the unknown soldier that they have over there.
Oh,
Have one there too?
Yeah, for their people. And then right here, if I can get this. Okay. The cross sabers,
Oh, wow.
that was in the area that I worked in too. That was we were told that Saddam Hussein had those made out of during the Iran-Iraq war. After Iraq defeated Iran, all the equipment that they had, they melted it down and made the hands holding the sabers up like that.
Oh, wow.
oh, wow.
Yes, sir.
And that is that's right. That's that area right there. They had a
Yes, sir.
set here and they had a set down here on this end.
Oh, wow.
But I can give you more. I can give
Veterans organizations?
I did a short little bit with the VFW, but time conflicts didn't work out, so I wasn't able to stick around with the VFW. But other than that, that's the only veteran organization that I've had any dealings with.
Yes, sir. Well, are there any other memories or experiences you'd be willing to share that we didn't cover so far?
Nothing that I can think of right now. I mean, like I said, I've covered a lot of things, talking about the areas that I've deployed to. I mean, like I said, we had some good times, we had bad times, we had good times. I mean, I got to travel to areas that I look back on and go, if I wouldn't have been in the military, I never would have gotten to go. I mean, I've been to, like I said, I've been to Fairbanks, Alaska, which is just outside of Fairbanks. The nearest town was actually called North Pole, Alaska. It wasn't North Pole, but it was called North Pole. Went up, got to see different caribou, or saw caribou, saw moose. I mean, I've been through Germany, I've been through Turkey, I've been through England, I've stayed in Iraq. Had a short little stint in can't think of the name of the town, name of the area now. Qatar. Had a few days in Qatar, so I've gotten to travel and see things that I would like to be able to take my family to. I've been to Spain, made 2 trips to Spain. Actually, when I was in Spain, my first trip to Spain was when the towers got hit.
Yes, sir.
I had taken, I was over there, and I had taken a flight crew I was in Morón the name of the town is actually Morón de la Frontera. And I had taken a flight crew from there down to Rotor Naval Air Station, which is on the lower part of Spain, and dropped them off. And they came back out and told me that the plane had flown into the towers. Well, we didn't think anything about it, and then they came back out and said another plane had flown into the towers. So I had to drive a military bus back like 2 hours to get back to my base, and at that point they were in lockdown, and nobody knew what was going on. And we were stuck. We couldn't, nothing was flying, so we didn't know when we were going to get to go home.
Yes, sir.
But then I went back a few years later. I actually have been to the Azores, which is a group of islands in the Atlantic Ocean. Like I said, I mean, I've gotten to see things that people, I didn't even know the Azores existed until they said, you're going to the Azores for 2 weeks. Great, what is that? So, as a matter of fact, that's the Azores right there.
Yes, sir.
Little group of islands there. So as far as things to remember, yeah, I remember a lot.
Yes, sir.
Things to forget, there's really nothing that I want to forget. I mean, the good and the bad, I want to remember it all because in my opinion, it makes me a better person.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. James, for your interview today, also for your service, and appreciate you helping out with my Eagle Scout project. I'd also like to thank Benjamin Riley for operating the camera here, and alrighty, I believe that's a wrap.
Thank you.